Welcome to the Low Carb USA podcast, where we seek to inspire you to help us build this community. I'm Doug Reynolds.
And this is Pam Devine.
So Pam, you wanted to speak with this guy, Jay Gulinello, and he's apparently been at a couple of our conferences before. I kind of recognize him now, but never actually got a chance to speak to him. So why don't you get this going?
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Jay. It was really super to see you again at the conference. About 2 or 3 weeks before the conference, I did a post talking about the conference and who's coming, and he wrote into me and said, Low Carb USA has a special place in my heart because I came to the 2017 conference and it changed my path. So I wanted to let him tell you the story. But it was really profound. And I said, let's make sure that we tell other people about this. It's very inspiring. And not only to other people, but to us for why we continue to put on live events and put up on social media resources, because it's surprising to us in a way. We really are changing lives. Welcome, Jay. And thanks for telling everybody your story.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. So yeah, 2017 actually was the first time that I attended, and I believe that was your second conference. And so my story started as an actor and a musician, which is, isn't that how every nutritional therapist story starts, I guess? So I moved to New York as an actor and a musician, and I was a personal trainer to make money on the side. And quickly realized that I couldn't get the results for my clients that I wanted. So I started studying nutrition on my own. And what that led to is in 2014 was a lot of research into ketogenic diets and intermittent fasting. Mm-hmm. So I put myself on one of these crazy diets and had amazing results. And so that was until I went to my primary care doctor, who I had been with for years, who had, we had a personal relationship. He had years of blood work on me. And of course, as you know, sometimes what happens when somebody goes on this kind of a dietary change, blood lipids can sort of, by conventional standards, get a little crazy. And so he sort of, in the end, he sort of accused me of, trying this and that and using drugs or whatever. He said no dietary intervention could possibly impact lipids in this way. And
so
I
they
said,
went down.
What's that?
Did they go down? Or did they go up?
They went up. Yes.
Okay.
So total cholesterol went up, LDL cholesterol went up, but triglycerides and HDL both moved in the positive direction. HDL was higher than it ever had been. Triglycerides lower than they ever had been. I felt fantastic. And my doctor wanted to put me on a statin. So I told him no. And he again accused me of, he said, no, he actually literally said, shoving bacon in your face could not possibly do this to your lipids. That was the quote. And I thought Doug would appreciate that given the...
Absolutely.
So I had to fire him, which I think that's an important point for a lot of people listening too, is that, doctors are people that learn things out of books. They're not bestowed with knowledge from birth. They don't have all the answers. And, but I was nervous. I was scared because this is an authority figure and he's telling me my life's literally in danger. So that sort of set me on this path. And of course, the first person I come across is Dave Feldman and all of his work, as he had just had that same experience a year prior to myself.
Yes.
I found out he was going to be at this conference called LowCarbUSA. And I said, what is LowCarbUSA? But I felt compelled to buy a plane ticket, get a hotel, and get a ticket to the conference so that I just felt the need to be around him and these people to honestly to comfort myself at some point, because I was trying to convince myself I wasn't going to die tomorrow.
Yeah, well, because that's what people were telling you. And so you had more to learn. And, as you learned, you had more to teach. Correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, leaving the conference was one of the highlights of my life at this point. I mean, it literally changed the trajectory of everything I did. You guys had NTA there at the time, Nutritional Therapy Association.
Yes.
And I talked their ear off for the weekend. And when I went home, the first credit card offer that came in the mail, I grabbed it. I maxed out a credit card to pay for tuition, went back to school for nutrition. And then I was able to implement this stuff for for clients. And that led to now my entrance into a clinical master's program in human nutrition and a job at a New York City hospital where, ironically enough, I now have doctors and nurses in my care for nutrition.
That's
so it's
amazing. So they're actually allowing this in this hospital.
It's a pilot program. It's very progressive. And I was actually shocked that they even hired me.
That
to be
is
honest,
awesome news, though.
No, it really is. And it speaks a lot to the trend of people wanting to learn more. Patients are teaching their doctors. We hear it time and time again where maybe their doctor didn't understand prior. They may have been against it. They may have been telling their patients like your doctor was because they didn't understand the trajectory of your LDL, your total cholesterol. What do those risk factors actually mean? And that's a big content of a lot of our live conferences and our social media posts and things, teaching, because there is a lot of misunderstanding about cholesterol and its effect on your risk factors for your total health, your heart health. Why don't you share a little bit about what you learned cholesterol's role in our health? I know you post a lot about it, so we're teaching others about this.
Absolutely. No, I mean, again, a lot of it comes from Dave Feldman's work and people like Nadir Ali, who are constantly trying to understand the mechanism as to why LDL potentially goes up on a lower carbohydrate diet. And it certainly seems that the ratios are extremely important, as well as taking cholesterol in context with other inflammatory markers. It's kind of amazing because along with these clients, I also get their blood work. So I have the blood work of these doctors, and I'm looking at them and I'm concerned because I might see a triglyceride in the 300s and an HDL very low in the 30s. But because the total number, say, is underneath the 200 threshold where they would consider it a problem, they don't think there's a problem. But I'm looking at them thinking, no, I'm fairly certain. Yeah, there's a problem here. I mean, I've got people with triglycerides approaching 400, but their total cholesterol might be 176, and they might be overweight, and they have all these other risk factors. But we get myopically focused on the total LDL, the total cholesterol number or the LDL number, and I think we miss the forest for the trees. So LDL's role is at this point still being discovered. Whether that's host defense, energy transport, I mean, all kinds of things. And so I'm enjoying the process of discovering it as well as I teach it. I always feel like, I'm certainly not the authority on this. I always will consider myself a student. And, again, that's where LowCarbUSA comes in, because I came this year because I saw the lineup of speakers and thought, again, I just have to be in that room with these people.
Because as we've been learning, your whole body requires cholesterol to function. Every cell in your body uses cholesterol to function, especially our hormones. But you can maybe talk a little bit more of that and as a fuel source of how you understand it.
Absolutely. And to that point, I'm always so blown away by people like, Ken Berry, who get in line almost immediately as soon as a presentation is done to ask questions, whether it relates to a patient of his. And I had a conversation with him about beta cells in the pancreas in a type 1 diabetic patient. It was just so interesting because, again, there's a feeling of there's still more to learn here. Not that I have all these answers because I have MD after my name. And and it's such a refreshing attitude to be in a room full of people who have such higher education, but who still consider themselves students. Which is,
I mean, we were literally talking about that yesterday. We had a local San Diego meeting here and ended up having sort of early dinner with a couple of the people that had been there afterwards, and talking about exactly that even the gurus of this of this environment, the Steve Finneys and Gary Taubes and those kinds of people are still learning every day. And to the point that you made was like, even on the stage during the final panel discussion, where Dr. Robert Sivers had something to say and Gary Taubes disagreed with him, and they went backwards and forwards on the stage. Doc Sivers kind of conceded a little bit to the fact that Gary was maybe had a point there, and they both learned, like right there on the stage in front of us. You know what I'm saying? And that was super cool to see as well.
I was listening to an interview with Nadir Ali, the cardiologist, and he said, you know, when scientists butt heads, I learn. And I think watching the disagreement, but at the most cordial level, of
course,
it's sometimes
respectful level, I think is important.
Totally, absolutely. And that's where some of the most amazing information, you know, comes forth. Because again, these two people are bringing vast amount of their own personal knowledge to this topic. I don't even want to call it a disagreement, just we're trying to get to an understanding. And I think that point is just, it's so important. And I think that's what we should look for in our primary care physician, someone who works with us rather than, you know, dictating something from Mount Olympus. You know, there are very few hard and fast rules, you know, in this, especially as we continue to evolve and learn in this space. So I just think that's fascinating. And I think that's what's so wonderful about the people that you have brought into the conference, because I tend to see that attitude throughout with the attendees and also with the speakers.
Yeah. I mean, we always try to have a few heavy hitters in there, but also we've been bringing in more and more newcomers to this speaker circuit, if you want to call it that. But all of them with incredible messages, and some of them, you know, going on to become extremely well known. In fact, Dave Feldman a couple of years ago was a breakout speaker at one of our events. In fact, I think even at the 2017 event, that was where he, you know, one of his first talks.
It was to an ApoE room. There's a small little room off on the side. I remember sitting there with like 10 other people. And that was when he first unveiled the lean mass hyperresponder graphic. And I looked at it and I said, that's me. Yeah. You know, so it was amazing to see him in that setting. And then, as you said, in 2019, just a month ago, he just commanded the room.
Yeah, I mean, he's just grown incredibly since then. It's incredible.
Yeah. So, and maybe there's some people who are listening to this podcast for the first time that are learning something new. And just a little explanation with Dave Feldman, he's showing that he can literally change the values of his total cholesterol, his LDL, based on what he eats by day, by week, by month. So when people go to their doctor and they get their total cholesterol checked once a year, and then their doctor says, oh, we need to put you on a statin. Well, it's not even really a true reflection of where is their cholesterol. Let's go back a little bit and talk about what you learned a little bit from Dave, and anybody who might be cardiology, like Dr. Brett Scher, Dr. David Diamond, who talks about what is the role of fat in our diet. Do you recall enough to be able to kind of say, is it a transporter? Does it help with our hormone production? You know, that kind of stuff? I
think the answer is all of the above. And Nadir Ali, and I wouldn't be able to articulate it as well as he did, but he explains that he believes that LDL increases because of the pathway that it shares with ketone production. So that's another interesting theory. And that's where I think he has a slight disagreement with Dave Feldman in his energy delivery model. So it's really interesting because I have a front row seat to this, and I was talking to Dave a little bit about it, and I would love to see, I was in another conference where the both of them were there together, watching them sort of talk. And it's just, again, it's one of those experiences where you learn a lot. But the one thing we do know is that, you know, to be able to have the metabolic flexibility to utilize fat as a fuel source is something that I think most people don't even realize is available to us, because carbohydrates and sugars are so ubiquitous, they're everywhere. And so people maybe don't even believe that this exists, but it truly is. There's an evolutionary reason for it. Food availability is unlike it's ever been. So if we didn't have the ability to utilize fat as a fuel source, quite honestly, we wouldn't be here right now.
People are so used to this 3 meals a day, 3 snacks, get food whenever you need it, and going on that roller coaster and crashes. People are finding, it's not a long-standing fuel, carbohydrates and glucose. Maybe it talks about, some of the recommendations over the last few decades of why you have to eat so often if people are carbohydrate reliant and glucose reliant. I like the conversation about how fatty acids extend the time between having to eat. It's a very clean burning fuel source, and it's like the slow burning log rather than kindling, where it just helps us to, and it just helps us to get through the day without ups and downs and ups and downs. It's more steady burning fuel with less oxidation and less stress to the body, it seems, as we study it and learn and feel it for ourselves.
So we getting to the end of our time limit here. Jay, why don't you just tell us a bit about what it is that you do now that you've got this certification from the NTA, and tell people how, if they want to get hold of you and hear more, how they can get hold of you.
Sure. Perpetual Health is the name of the company that I started, and I'm not quite sure how it's going to evolve yet because I'm finishing my master's, and so right now I'm just doing one-on-one consultations, and I'm working at a hospital in New York where I have doctors and nurses as clients. And to that degree, I guess what I'm trying to do is hope that I can show them the efficacy of a different nutritional pattern, and maybe that will filter down to their patients. So sort of a top-down approach.
That's awesome.
After I finish the master's, my goal is actually to break away a little bit from one-on-one and try to get the message out there on a larger scale, speaking at conferences, utilizing what I've learned at NTA, which was amazing. Now what I'm learning in a clinical master's program, which is, mind-boggling to some degree. And so Perpetual Health, I guess, will evolve over that time period as well. And right now, Instagram and Facebook are Perpetual Health CO is where you can get in touch with me if you have, questions or would want to work one-on-one. But that's the ultimate goal, I think, is just to disseminate this information that people need to hear so that they can reclaim their own health.
Same way we started LowCarbUSA was we had amazing personal experience and said, how is it that no one knows about this? Like,
right.
Get that message out. So
true.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us, for being part of the solution, as I say to people. And hopefully we see you next year.
Oh, absolutely. You won't be able to keep me away. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Pam.
Brilliant, man. Thank you. So you'll notice that we haven't had any commercials at all during this podcast, and we intend to keep it like that if we possibly can. But at the same time, the work that we're doing and the efforts that we're going to get the clinical guidelines done, there's just so much to do. And in order to really, for this to be sustainable, we need your help. And so what we're asking you to do is go and take a look at our Patreon account. There's actually quite a few options there. It provides you with options to actually go onto our site, and there's membership options there where you can get access to all our video content and other perks of being a member, or even just $1 a month. Become a patron. And you can find that in patreon.com/LowCarbUSA. I'll put it in the show notes and in the episode notes so that you can find it. And help us to change the world.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people take a look at the conference registrations, and I think they immediately assume that, from a distance, that these might be money-making endeavors that we're doing with these conferences. And it's hard to admit, and it's hard to tell people that we really aren't making any money from these. All 11 of the events that we've done have not been a profitable endeavor. We've literally had to dip into our credit, basically. It wasn't anything. It wasn't like we actually had a pocket to dip into and put money into. We've had to take loans and get a lot of credit for these events. So any little bit that you can help, every ticket that's sold, every little bit of $1 a month in a Patreon account will help us to fund our endeavors and fund the programs so that we continue to do some of these other things that are free content. The project management that we're doing on the clinical guidelines will really go a long way.